Hello to my online learners and welcome to chapter 11, the census, the last unit, the last chapter in this unit. What we're looking at, this one is pretty intense with a lot of content in it. We're going to go really basic and stick to that. Pretty much name that part. Generally, what does it do is what we're looking at. So when we're looking at the census, first off, to realize the reason we have census is to take input from our environment. And this is done by our special senses. So we're going to look at the eyes, the ears, the taste buds, the nose, the mouth, and basically generally how they work. They gather sensory input, and they usually are protective in nature, and they need to be highly integrated with our nervous system for survival. Okay? A lot of different words here. You'll notice that opia has to do with eyes. Auto has to do with ears. Otis, auto. Anyway, we'll go through a lot of stuff. Don't worry too much about it. We're going to look at our special senses. So we're going to look at sight, hearing, balance, which is the inner ear, taste, and a little bit about smell. Then just generally you have senses mainly in your skin for cold, pain, pressure. We're not going to talk about nausea, hunger, and thirst, although they do exist. These are called afferent or sensory neurons. So it collects the information and sends it to the brain. And often as a result, the brain will do something with this information and often make a motor response. And this is usually a protective mechanism, or in some cases, you eat it. So if you smell food, it smells yummy, you then will eat it. Okay. The sense of sight. This is the trickiest one. So first off, here's the external part of the eye. The external part of the eye, I want you to be aware of what's there to protect it. Don't worry about all these words other than the word lacrimal has to do with tears. And you have tear ducts and they come from a sac. And notice, you may not notice, but if you cry a lot, you know how you get that sniffles? That's because your eyes drain into your nose. So as a result, you get the sniffles. So your eyes are very sensitive. So they are protected by the bony orbit around it. You also have eyelids to protect it, eyelashes, which ideally are to keep dust out, not just to look pretty. You have a conjecta, which is sort of a layer over top the cornea to protect it. And you also have tears. Tears are there to wash the eye, and there's some chemicals, little chemical enzymes are in there, which also help break it down. Okay? Now, when we look at external structure of the eye, you've got the orbit, which is the bony padding outside. There's a little bit of fat there. You also have 6 short muscles which connect the eye to it, and that's what allows you to move your eye in directions. I want you to know there's muscles. Don't worry about them, naming them all. The eyelid closes to protect it. Eyelashes protect large particles from entering your eye, and supposedly your eyebrows do too, but I'm not quite sure how they do that. Okay. Your eyelid contains sebaceous glands that secrete oil to the eyelids to keep them soft and palatable. You usually don't notice they're there until one of them get clogged up, and that's just gross. The conjunctiva is a membrane over the surface of the eyeball, and it protects it from being exposed. Then you have the lacrimal apparatus, which is basically your tear ducts and tear tubes, and they store tears and they come out of the right ducts. Okay. Tears are antiseptic, so they can fight some disease. Not a lot, but a little. Okay, there's your eyeball. Now, when we look at the internal structures of the eye, it's a globe-shaped eyeball, which is the origin of vision, and it's separated into 2 chambers. So let's look at these chambers. So here is your eyeball. This is a cross section sorry, this is a sagittal section. So here's the front, here's your eyelids, here's your eyelashes. There are two sections divided by the lens. In the front is the anterior chamber and the back is the posterior chamber. There is a fluid in both of these. The fluid in the front is called the aqueous humor. The fluid in the back is the vitreous humor. So that's alphabetical A to V. The vitreous humor is a little thicker, and that they both help bend the light. Then you have the opening, which is the pupil. Notice it is a space, not a structure. So the light will come through the cornea, which is on the outside, which is a protective clear covering. And the cornea is it's in continuation with the outer layer called the sclera. So the sclera is the white of your eye, and then it goes clear in front of the eye, and that's the cornea. So you got the cornea, aqueous humor, then you go through the pupil. The pupil is changed in diameter by the iris, and that's the pretty colored part. They say it acts like a camera, but none of you know how a camera acts. So basically, it is a circular muscle which will contract in bright light and expand in dark light. So that's how you've got your iris working, and it's all just to keep the light focused, or to keep the amount of light so you can get the right light on the back image. Okay, then the light will be also bent by what's called the lens. The lens is this crystalline thing that is held on by what are called ciliary bodies and suspensory ligaments, and these help change the shape of the lens. When you're young, your eyes can adapt quickly to focus close up and far away. As you get older, this lens gets less elastic, and these suspensory ligaments they get a little hard. So as a result, your eyes cannot focus close up front, and that's why you've got reading glasses. This is why old people wear reading glasses. These are actually my special computer glasses because I need even ones to see at this length. So welcome to old age. Anyway, so the light comes through the cornea, through the aqueous humor, through the lens, and then it's bent by the vitreous humor, and it focuses on the best spot called the fovea centralis, which is just Latin for central focus. And that's where the majority of the light focuses, and that is on the inner layer of the eye called the retina. So we talked about the sclera, which is the outer protective layer of the eye. We've got the middle layer called the choroid layer, and that's where the blood vessels are. And then the inner layer called the retina is where the photosensitive pigments, the rods and the cones are. Then all of these will collect the retina, the images from the retina will then collect into what's called the optic nerve and go out optic nerve, cranial nerve number 2, if you paid attention to that. Okay? Because there's a spot at the bottom where everything's coming out, this is seen as the blind spot of the eye. And when you look at the pictures of your eyeball, it is usually darker. Okay? Good. So, let's summarize what I said. You have fluids. The aqueous humor is watery. It bathes the iris. It fills the chambers. The vitreous humor is jelly-like, and it occupies the area behind the lens. The eye has 3 layers. You've got your sclera, cornea, and retina. That should be sclera, choroid, and retina. The outermost layer is the sclera. The sclera is the outermost layer. It serves as a protected shield. Up front is the cornea, which is interesting how up front it's clear and at the back it is white. The cornea is one of the few places in your body that does not have blood vessels. You actually get the gas from the outside of your eye. The cornea has 6 layers. Don't worry about them. Just the cornea is the clear part at the front. Okay. Then you have the choroid layer, and continue with, so the choroid layer is the pigmented middle layer. It allows the eye to be nourished. This is where blood vessels are. It's pigmented. That's why if you look at cats, you know how cats' eyes are shiny and will shine back? That's because they have a light absorbing pigment in the back of their eyes. Your iris is your colored part. And this is continuous with the choroid. The iris is a muscle that allows to control the amount of light going into the eye. And then you have the lens. The lens is controlled by ciliary muscles, and it makes it thicker, thinner, allowing the incoming rays to focus on the retina. So your eye can actually adjust, your lens can adjust a small amount, but enough to help you focus. Then you have this processing is called accommodation, which basically changes the size of the pupil and changes the curvature of the lens to allow your eye to focus, and it needs to hit that retina. If it goes short, you have myopia, and if it goes too long, you have hyperopia, which we'll talk about briefly at the end. Okay? The retina, very delicate, and it contains the optic nerve. There are two types of light sensing receptors. Cones, which detect color, and rods, which detect black and white. And rods are more active in dim light, so that's why it's really hard to see color in dim light. Okay? There's little chemicals in there, or photopigments, so when the light hits the light receptors, it changes into a chemical reaction, which will then affect send impulses to the optic nerve. Okay? Good. In summary, the light rays enter the eye, pass through the cornea, aqueous humor, pupil, which realizes a space, the lens, the vitreous humor, and it's focused on the retina. Here, the photoreceptors of the retina will cause impulses to be sent to the optic nerve, which carries the information to the occipital lobe of the brain, where it is interpreted. The sense of hearing. I'm going to start the sense of hearing on a second video because I only have 3 minutes left on this. So stay tuned for part 2 and the excitement of hearing.